97.5 The Game Podcasting is sponsored by Modern Exterminating, a family-oriented company. Professional, honest, and dependable pest control solutions. We're your one-stop shop for all pests.
With the addition of Juan Francisco.
That's fun to say.
Francisco Fernandez.
I'm just going to call him Francisco.
Francisco.
Not really worried about his first name now.
Keep doing that enough, we're just going to forget what it is because it's not going to matter, right? That's not the fun part to say. But with that addition, I think you can go ahead and chalk up the roster to being almost complete for Lamont Paris and his team next year. And of course, I don't think you can understate this enough exactly just how important this offseason was to try to build a roster with a lot more money than you've ever had before to work with to try to get back to the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And now that we have it, taking a look at it, I've got it written out in front of me in terms of a potential starting five with some mix and match things in here, and that'll be up to Lamont to decide during the offseason of how this is going to look, and be optimized. Point guard, either starting Corey Mincy or Marcus Johnson. Corey Mincy, the transfer from George Mason, previously at Presbyterian, or Marcus Johnson, the top 60 player, according to 24/7, the number 3 point guard in the country, or number 6 point guard in the country, number 3 player in the state of Ohio. At shooting guard, I also put Corey Mincy because he could also play off ball, and based off a discussion I had with somebody who was who was an assistant coach in the league he played in, I will not say which one, he told me that more than likely it makes sense for him to play off ball.
And that would be intel.
Yes, that would be my intel, was he believed that maybe Corey Mincy is not best suited as playing point guard in the SEC, but would make a great shooting guard, somebody who you can play in on-ball situations, in on-ball actions like pick and rolls and regular ball screens, pick and pops, things of that nature. He said that's probably his best role based off of how we had to prepare for him. But along with Corey Mincy at shooting guard, maybe Shane Blakeney from Drexel and Davion Hanna from Alabama. At small forward, I think we can go ahead and chalk up Camden Heide from Texas as being the guy who's going to be that starter. Power forward, I've kind of penciled in Alexis Bielauskas from Wisconsin. He is a big man, but mostly tall man, play power forward. And then at center, I think is where you'll see Juan Francisco Fernandez. And if that's your starting front court, and you look at what last year's starting front court was, you already have a significant height advantage that you didn't have last year. Bielauskas is about 6'10". Depending on where you look for Juan Francisco Fernandez, it is 6'10" or 6'11", just depending on what website you were looking at, to kind of get a gauge on Juan. And Juan can't play a little further from the basket, so maybe you do just swap those around and you technically make Juan Francisco Fernandez a kind of a stretch big, and then you can maybe play Bielauskas a little closer to the basket. Certainly a thought, certainly an idea. But when writing this out, I did have the thought there, Preston Thorne, even though if it's still very much a wait and see how the pieces fit, I do think you have a lot more versatility with your lineup than you had at any point last year, and you are much better in the size department. Rebounding should not be what it was last year. Shooting, TBD. I don't think we're going to shoot the P out of the ball, but I can see this group being adequate. How they'll look defensively as a unit still remains to be seen, but I think the one thing that is clear with this team, despite not seeing them on the floor together, despite me only seeing a lot of individual pieces, I do think you have upgraded in athleticism and in size. And I think that alone is enough to make you feel maybe better about this team in theory than what you might have felt about last year's team in theory. What that ceiling still is, still very much a question mark. But I do feel at least already, without seeing them on the floor at once, my hypothesis is they will be more athletic, they'll be a much better rebounding team, and you are positionally a lot more versatile and won't find yourself in some of the pickles you found yourself in from a versatility standpoint last year.
All right, so you answered two of my questions. Height, check. Athleticism, check. Skill is my last question. Will this team be more skilled than the roster from last year? When I say skilled, I think you might have slightly addressed shooting, but also I consider skill ball handling, passing, and we're talking like basic basketball skills. Mm-hmm. On the surface, does this team feel as if this roster, not this team because they haven't constructed themselves as a team yet, do they feel more skilled than the roster last year?
I would say a little bit, but the potential to be a lot of it. Right, I think one thing that I still want to see more of is who are going to be the primary playmakers in terms of getting other people involved. I have not seen enough of Marcus Johnson against SEC level talent or SEC level or players that are older than him. Right, a lot of things you'll see with him is like high school tape, great, but you're playing against kids that are the same age or younger. Always kind of hard to take into account that you will be playing against much older players once you are in college. Is he going to be able to facilitate? Is Corey Mincy going to have to play some point guard? If so, how well is he going to be able to facilitate? Who's going to be your primary playmaker, right? Your primary playmaker a couple of years ago was Colin Murray-Boyles. Not a point guard, but he's a guy that you can run your entire offense through. In order to answer the passing question, I need to know who you're going to run this thing through.
He's also an NBA lottery pick.
Also an NBA lottery pick. He's a top 10 pick in the NBA draft.
That's a very
all-rookie player.
Yeah, that's a tough one to replace. All right, my next question is the conundrum that we faced last year where we had our person that we were trying to make the primary ball handler was also our person who was the person who shot the ball the most.
Highest usage rate in the SEC.
Are we going to run into the same Michi situation this year with not necessarily having, say, Corey Mincy? We're putting Corey Mincy because what I heard when you were talking about Corey Mincy was somebody who's better off being a shooting guard but might have to play point guard. And I felt like that's the situation that we were stuck with Michi last year.
Yes. I think the goal here is for Marcus Johnson to be good enough to start right away. As a top 60 player in the country out of high school, that wouldn't be unprecedented, right? Tall task, tough ask, but he's with a lot of veteran players. He's talented enough to clearly be seen as one of the top 60 high school basketball players in the country. There should be an ability to be able to do that. Hopefully, my hope is I hope Corey Mincy isn't put in that position. But Corey Mincy, even if he is the starting shooting guard, no matter what he starts at, will be a higher usage player, right? When he was at George Mason, high usage player. Presbyterian, when he was on the floor, high usage player. He's going to get a lot of playmaking opportunity and a lot of shot opportunity because he is probably the most explosive scorer that you have, especially from a guard position. Now, I was watching a little bit of the FIBA under 19 stuff from a few years ago with Juan Francisco Fernandez and some of the FIBA World Cup stuff from Fernandez when he was at Argentina. And maybe not high usage, but high effectiveness in certain situations because he can handle the ball really well. I'm not asking him to shoot a ton of threes. He's got a decent-looking shot, but I'm not asking him to go out there and be Nikola Jokic.
Boris Diaw?
Got to shoot better.
Okay.
Yeah. To draw the Boris Diaw comps, you have to be at least an above-average three-point shooter.
Okay.
And in college basketball, it's 33%, or almost 30%.
And he's not there.
No. At least his in-league shooting numbers in the top flight Spanish league were not three-point worthy enough to be Boris Diaw.
I just said Boris Diaw because one of my favorite players where you look at him and say, that guy could do all that?
Oh, Boris Diaw, one of the most underappreciated players in the history of the NBA. Hey, look, I know the Spurs dominated the Miami Heat in 2014 in that finals, and Kawhi Leonard got all the love. They don't win it without Boris Diaw. I feel pretty confident that I will stand 10 toes down on that take for the rest of my life.